Welcome to The Bookish Mind, Season 4, Episode 14. Today we're exploring one of the most transformative ideas from Atomic Habits by James Clear. How to automate your environment so that good habits happen effortlessly and bad ones become nearly impossible. It's a concept that sounds almost too good to be true sometimes. But once you really dive into the sources, you see how profoundly impactful it can be. Our mission today is to unpack precisely how to make your environment work for you, rather than constantly working against you, effectively turning those well-intentioned plans into guaranteed actions.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here is how we can sort of pivot from relying purely on that often fickle resource we call willpower. Instead, we can strategically set up systems that inherently guide us toward better choices, almost, on autopilot. We're going to look at some surprising historical examples and practical modern applications that really illustrate this powerful principle in action. It's really about designing your way to success.
Okay, let's unpack this then. There is a story that really sets the stage, I think. Imagine being Victor Hugo, right? Summer of 1830. He's facing this impossible deadline for a new book. He'd promised his publisher a year before, but, well, he had absolutely nothing to show for it. Zero. So, with less than 6 months to go, he concocted this rather extreme plan to beat his procrastination.
Extreme is probably the right word for it.
Definitely. He collected all his clothes, literally every single outfit he owned, and asked an assistant to lock them away in a big chest. He was left with nothing to wear except a single large shawl.
Can you even imagine?
Right. Lacking any suitable clothing to go outdoors, he literally had no choice. He had to stay in his study and just write like crazy. And the result? The Hunchback of Notre Dame was published 2 weeks early.
Which is just incredible. That's a remarkable approach, if maybe a little unconventional. And it brings up a really important question for us. Sometimes success isn't just about making good habits easier. It's actually about making bad habits so incredibly difficult they're almost impossible.
Making them harder, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Victor Hugo's strange method. It's a perfect example of what psychologists call a commitment device.
A commitment device. Okay.
Yeah, a commitment device is essentially a choice you make right now in the present that fundamentally constrains or, controls your actions in the future. It's a way to lock in future behavior, bind you to good habits, and crucially, restrict you from bad ones. It basically removes temptation from the equation by making a future undesirable action costly or, well, in Hugo's case, literally impossible.
Right.
And to be clear, this is kind of an inversion of the third law of behavior change from the book. Usually it's make it easy for good habits. But here we're seeing the incredible power in making the bad habits difficult.
So beyond, locking away all your clothes, which seems a bit much for most of us.
Just a bit, yeah.
What are some more practical ways you or I could create a commitment device in our daily lives? Because showing up to work in a shawl is probably not going to fly.
Right, we need something a bit more scalable. And there are lots of ways. For instance, if you're trying to reduce overeating, instead of buying that giant family-sized bag of chips,
Guilty.
You can purchase food in individual packages. That extra step, opening another little bag, it adds just enough friction to make you pause and think.
Okay, makes sense.
Or, maybe more seriously, to prevent future gambling issues, some individuals voluntarily ask to be put on banned lists at casinos or online poker sites. That's a powerful commitment device.
Wow. Yeah, that's serious.
It is. But we see it in smaller ways, too, like athletes needing to make weight for a competition. They might leave their wallets at home during the week before weigh-in, just to avoid that fast food temptation.
Simple but effective.
Exactly. And a friend and fellow habits expert, Nir Eyal, he's a really smart one for digital discipline. He uses an outlet timer for his internet router.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, every night at 10 p.m., bang, the timer cuts off the power. That's the signal. Time for bed. It lets him use his good intentions from earlier in the day before he falls victim to that late-night scroll,
So it's really about proactively setting yourself up for success, kind of outsmarting your future, less disciplined self.
That's a great way to put it.
I love that idea of making it require more work to get out of the good habit than it does to just get started. Like if you're motivated to get in shape, maybe schedule a yoga session and pay for it ahead of time.
Yes.
The only way to bail then is to actually cancel, which takes effort and might cost you money. It's a clever way to just ensure you follow through.
Absolutely. And while these commitment devices are great for making bad habits difficult, we can actually push this even further. We can aim to make good habits, well, inevitable, and bad habits truly impossible.
Okay, from difficult to impossible. How?
Well, this brings us to another fascinating historical example. This one shifts from individual resolve to more of a systemic solution.
All right, I'm intrigued.
This story starts way back. Dayton, Ohio, 1844. There's a man named John Henry Patterson.
Okay.
He opened a small supply store, mainly for coal miners.
Mm.
Now, he had steady customers, not much competition, but the store. It just kept struggling financially.
Weird.
We couldn't figure it out at first. Inventory seemed off. And then he discovered the problem. His employees were stealing from him.
Ah.
Yeah. You have to remember, in the mid-1800s, this was incredibly common. Receipts, often just kept in open drawers, easy to alter, easy to just discard.
Right, no security.
None. No cameras, no tracking software. If you wanted to prevent theft, you pretty much had to hover over your employees constantly, which is exhausting and just not efficient.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So as Patterson is mulling over this problem, he stumbles upon an advertisement for something called Ritty's Incorruptible Cashier.
Incorruptible cashier sounds promising.
Doesn't it? It was basically the very first cash register.
Yeah.
And the brilliant part of its design was that it automatically locked the cash and the receipts inside after every single transaction.
Ah, clever.
Very. So Patterson, pretty desperate for a fix, bought 2 of them.
Yeah.
The result was astounding. Employee theft at his store vanished overnight.
Wow. Seriously.
Seriously. In just 6 months, his business went from losing money to making a $5,000 profit. That's like over $100,000 in today's money.
Incredible.
He was so impressed, so blown away, he bought the rights to the invention, founded the National Cash Register Company, which, as you probably know, became wildly successful.
Yeah, NCR. Still around. So what's the big takeaway here for us?
Well, the real brilliance of the cash register wasn't about trying to change the employees' morals.
Right.
It wasn't about lecturing them on ethics.
Right. It wasn't a pep talk.
No.
Yeah.
It automated ethical behavior simply by making stealing practically impossible.
Yeah.
It just ramped up the friction for the bad habits so much that it wasn't really an option anymore. This is like the ultimate way to lock in future behavior, not by demanding more willpower in the moment, but by designing the system itself. It just fundamentally changes the playing field.
That cash register story, it's such a fantastic illustration of what Atomic Habits calls a one-time choice, something that pays off again and again. You put in a bit of effort up front, maybe make an investment, but then it creates this increasing value over time without any more conscious decisions. I'm really fascinated by this idea. A single decision delivering returns repeatedly.
Absolutely. And these strategic one-time decisions are a profoundly straightforward way to use that make it easy part of the third law of behavior change. By making these choices, you're effectively automating your future habits. It's really powerful.
So how do we spot these opportunities? How do we identify them in our own lives?
That's a great question. One way is to think about any recurring decision you make that you kind of wish you didn't have to keep making.
Okay.
You know, something that drains energy or willpower regularly, that's often a prime candidate for a one-time choice. Or look for those high leverage areas, things that impact multiple daily habits.
That's a good framework. What decision do I keep making that I wish I could just eliminate?
Yeah, that puts it into perspective. So if we apply that across different areas of life,
Yeah.
what are some powerful examples?
Okay, let's run through a few. Nutrition. Buying a water filter. Simple, right? But it makes clean drinking water instantly accessible. You don't think, you just drink.
Right.
Using smaller plates can subtly, almost unconsciously, help reduce how much you eat. For sleep, investing in a really good mattress or getting proper blackout curtains or even just taking the TV out of your bedroom. These can significantly improve sleep quality without needing daily effort or willpower.
They sound like such simple things when you list them out, but yeah, you can see the cumulative impact.
Exactly. And productivity, this is a big one for so many of us. Think about the constant stream of distractions we face.
Tell me about it.
A one-time choice could be unsubscribing from all those emails you never read, turning off notifications on your phone, most of them anyway.
All the notifications. Right. Setting your phone to silent by default. Using email filters aggressively, or even, taking the plunge and deleting games and social media apps from your phone entirely. That's a tough one for some.
It can be. But these drastically reduce distractions without you having to fight them off every single minute.
So it's less about that daily grind of resisting temptation and more about just removing the source of the temptation. I think I might need to delete a few apps after we finish talking.
Haha, it's exactly that. Then think about happiness and health. Maybe getting a dog. It forces you outdoors, encourages connection.
Yeah, sure.
Moving to a friendlier, more walkable neighborhood. Getting vaccinated, that's a huge one-time health decision. Buying good shoes to avoid back pain later. Getting a supportive office chair or standing desk. All these are one-time choices, maybe investments, that have a lasting positive impact on your well-being.
Makes sense.
And finally, finance. Things like enrolling in an automatic savings plan where the money just disappears before you see it. Setting up automatic bill pay so you never miss one. Yeah, auto pay is a lifesaver.
Totally. Or cutting that cable service you don't really watch.
Yeah.
Calling your phone or internet provider to negotiate a lower bill, do it once, save money every month. These all automate better financial habits. You don't have to remember them again and again.
It's actually pretty powerful when you realize that. If you just implemented maybe half of these one-time actions,
Right.
even if you didn't give another conscious thought to your habits after that, you'd likely find yourself living a much better, maybe easier life a year from now. It's like setting up this positive domino effect.
Exactly. And technology, of course, is maybe the most reliable and effective way today to guarantee the right behavior and automate these kinds of choices. It can transform actions that used to be hard or annoying or complicated into behaviors that are just easy, painless, simple.
Yeah.
And this is especially useful for those things that happen too infrequently to become real habits, like, say, rebalancing your investment portfolio. How many people actually remember to do that regularly?
Not many, I bet.
Probably not. But technology can remember to do it for you. Automated investing, things like that.
Right. So beyond investments, where else do we see this tech automation really playing out, for better or maybe for worse sometimes?
Oh, it's everywhere. In medicine, you've got prescriptions that are automatically refilled. In personal finance, like we said, employees save for retirement with automatic deductions from their paycheck. In cooking, meal delivery services can basically do your grocery shopping and planning.
Yeah, those kits are popular.
Very. For productivity, you've got website blockers that just cut off social media when you need to focus. It reminds me of that quote by the mathematician Alfred North Whitehead. He wrote, "Civilization advances by extending the number of operations we can perform without thinking about them." Technology lets us do that on a personal level.
That's a great quote. But, okay, here's the flip side, right? Because this amazing power of technology, it can also subtly work against us. It can enable the very habits we might want to avoid.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about binge watching. Netflix, YouTube, they just autoplay the next episode. You actually have to put more effort into stop watching than to just let it keep going.
Precisely. It lowers the friction for that potentially unproductive habit so much that stopping becomes the harder choice. The path of least resistance is just keep watching.
Yeah.
Technology creates this level of convenience that lets you act on your tiniest whims and desires instantly. The effort needed to act on an impulse becomes effectively zero. You feel a tiny pang of hunger. Food can be delivered in minutes. Slightest hint of boredom, boom, you're lost down a social media rabbit hole.
Guilty again.
We all are, sometimes. The downside is we can find ourselves just jumping from one easy task to the next easy task without ever making time for the more difficult but ultimately more rewarding work. It's like we're constantly being nudged towards instant gratification.
I know, I definitely find myself gravitating towards social media during any little bit of downtime. If I feel bored for even like a fraction of a second, my hand reaches for my phone. It's almost automatic. And it's easy to write these off as, oh, I'm just taking a quick break. But over time, they really add up. They accumulate into a serious chunk of time, a serious distraction.
So what's a concrete example of fighting back against this kind of automation, the bad kind, specifically with technology?
Well, James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, he shared his own pretty powerful strategy that he used while writing the book.
Okay.
Every Monday morning, his assistant would reset the passwords on all his social media accounts, logged him out on every single device.
Whoa!
Yeah, so he worked all week without those easy distractions. Then on Friday, she'd send him the new passwords so he could use them over the weekend if he wanted. Come Monday morning, reset again.
That's dedication. What if you don't have an assistant? Good point. You could easily team up with a friend or a family member. You reset each other's passwords each week. It's a great example of using a human commitment device, leveraging technology against itself.
That's a bold move, almost radical in today's world. What was the outcome for him? Did it work?
Apparently, one of the biggest surprises for him was how quickly he adapted. He said within the first week, he realized he didn't actually need to check social media nearly as often as he had been.
Interesting.
It had simply been so easy, so frictionless, that it just became the default thing to do, the path of least resistance. Once that bad habit became impossible, or at least very difficult, to indulge without significant effort, he discovered he really did have the motivation, the focus to work on more meaningful tasks.
Mm.
It's like by removing the mental candy from his environment, it became much easier to eat the healthy stuff, metaphorically speaking. It wasn't about raw willpower anymore. It was about creating a different default setting for himself.
This whole deep dive has really shown, I think, that when it's working in your favor, automation can make your good habits pretty much inevitable and your bad habits virtually impossible. It's a huge shift, isn't it? From that daily struggle of willpower to a more strategic, upfront design of your life and your environment.
Exactly. By using these clever commitment devices, making those strategic one-time decisions, and leveraging technology wisely, both, harnessing its power for good habits and defending against its pull towards bad ones, you really can create what you might call an environment of inevitability.
Mm,
It becomes a space where good habits aren't just something you hope for, they're an outcome that's virtually guaranteed.
yeah.
And that frees up so much mental energy for what truly matters.
So, as you, our listener, go about your day today, maybe consider this. What's one small, one-time change you could make to your environment? Something that would make a positive habit inevitable or a negative one impossible, without you even having to think about it tomorrow. That's definitely something to mull over.
Yeah, and building on that, what's that one system, maybe just one small thing you could put in place that frees up your mental energy? Energy you could then use for the more complex, more creative tasks that machines can't do yet, the stuff that requires your unique human insight. That's where the real leverage lies, I think.
Great final thought. Until next time, keep diving deep into what makes you well-informed.